week one of the fantasy baseball season, and it's still continuing, but with teams playing 3 or 4 games so far in the early going, here's a few hitters I would look to add on the waiver wire so far this week. The first guy's Nate Lowe of the Texas Rangers. So Nate Lowe, the first baseman for Texas. Obviously, it's a rebuild season here for the Texas Rangers, and Nate Lowe this season so far, 5 for 14 on the season with 1 home run and a crazy 9 RBIs for Lowe with a 357 batting average. And his on base is the same as well. So Nate Lowe, 2 big games so far early in the season. On April 3rd at Kansas City Royals, he went 1 for 4 in that ball game with 2 RBIs. Then April 4th, he went 2 for 4 with 2 hits, a single, a home run, and 3 RBIs. And then today versus Toronto, he's back in the lineup once again, is Nate Lowe. And he's a good hitting first baseman. He was decent last season with the Tampa Bay Rays, but now he's going to have an everyday job here with this Texas Ranger team. And he's a player available in 74% of fantasy leagues, and he can help you at the first base position or utility. And right now, like I said, there's no one on Texas really who's hitting the ball at a good rate or a big superstar. So maybe this could be the breakout season for Nate Lowe, and he's definitely worth an ad. The second hitter is Michael Taylor of the Kansas City Royals. So Taylor, he was a top prospect for seasons with the Washington Nationals, but I just feel like he never got the fair shake from Washington. But the times he did play a lot of ball games, he definitely produced for the Nationals, I believe. But he had to move on, and now he goes to a Kansas City team, just like the Texas Rangers. They don't have many big hitters. I know they got Jorge Soler, Merrifield, and Benintendi, but besides that, they got a lot of holes on this roster and a lot of guys to fill them in. And Michael Taylor so far this season, 6 of 13 from the plate, 4 runs scored, 2 RBIs, a 462 batting average. So Michael Taylor, the ball well, and it might be just early season beginner's luck here. I know it's only 3 games, but his first game versus Texas opening day, April 1st, 3 for 5 with 3 hits, a run scored, a homer, and 3 RBIs. April 3rd versus Texas again, 2 for 2 runs, a homer, and 3 RBIs. And yesterday versus Texas, 1 for 4 with a run was Michael Taylor. So Taylor, he's getting an opportunity. He's batting 6th or 7th right now in this Kansas City Royal lineup. And he's going to be an everyday player here. And like I said, he's finally getting an opportunity to play. And we'll see what he's got for the Royals and if he'll have fantasy value throughout the season. And right now, he's available in 31% of fantasy leagues. The next hitter is Donovan Solano of the San Francisco Giants. So Solano, last season, he was a great hitter at the plate, and he qualifies at second, third, and short, so that's good versatility. And he's a player owned in 53% of leagues, but Solano, he's still out there, obviously, in 47% of leagues. And so far in the early going, Solano, 7 of 14 from the plate, no home runs, 2 RBIs, a 500 batting average, 500 on base, and 4 runs scored. So this guy last season, he was a hit machine for the San Francisco Giants, batting .326, but obviously he's not going to have a lot of power numbers. He's a middle infielder, and he hit 3 homers, 29 RBIs last season. And so far in the first 3 games of this season, April 1st at Seattle, 2 of 5 from the plate, 2 runs scored with a double. April 2nd at Seattle, again 3 for 5 from the plate, 2 runs scored, and 2 RBIs. And then yesterday at Seattle, 2 for 4 with 2 singles. So Solano, he's not going to have power like I mentioned, but he's a player that's going to put the ball in play. He's not going to strike out a lot, and he's a guy that can hit at a good pace for this San Francisco Giant team and play pretty well in my opinion. And like I said, if you need some middle infield help or just another batter for your bench or utility, I think Solano's a pretty good pickup. The next player, the guy is Evan Longoria, Solano's teammate of the San Francisco Giants. So Longoria so far, he's been hitting the ball in the first 3 games of the season here for the Giants versus the Seattle Mariners. But let's be honest, the Mariners pitching isn't that good. So far in the early going, Longoria 4 for 11, 2 runs scored, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, and a .364 batting average with a .462 on base. So Longoria, maybe he's feeling young again. Or like I said, maybe it's beginner's luck to the season, and the Seattle Mariners team isn't good at all at pitching the baseball, and that's what it could be. So far in the first 3 games, April 1st, 2 of 4 from the plate with a run scored, a homer and 1 RBI. April 2nd, 2 for 3 with a run, a homer and 3 RBIs. And then yesterday, 0 for 4 he went. So now they'll have a day off here, San Francisco. And they got 3 games at San Diego this week. And then a 3-game set versus the Colorado Rockies in San Francisco. So right here, pretty decent matchups coming up in good hitters ballparks here for Longoria and the Giants. But obviously this San Diego team's pretty stacked. And they got a pretty good starting rotation. But right now, Longoria, he's available in 85% of fantasy leagues. And if you need a third baseman, or like I said, just a hitter to fill out the bench, I know it's early in the year, but if these guys are producing and you got someone to drop, I don't think it's the worst pickup in the world to get Longoria. The next player is Chris Owings of the Colorado Rockies. So it's surprising to me that Owens, he actually still has a role here with a baseball team as an everyday starter. But the good versatility he has is second, third, shortstop, and outfield. This guy qualifies at is Chris Owens. And so far in the early going, 4 for 10 from the plate, 1 home run, 1 RBI, 2 stolen bases, a 400 batting average, and a 500 on base for Chris Owens in the first 4 games of the season. April 1st versus the Dodgers, 3 for 3 from the plate, 3 runs scored with an RBI, and he even drew 2 walks. Then April 2nd, he went 0 for 2. April 3rd, 0 for 2. He was a pinch hitter in that ball game and stayed in as a late inning replacement. And then last night versus the Dodgers, 1 for 3 with a run scored and a double. So right now, Owens, he's hitting the ball pretty decent. He's getting on base and drawing walks even when he's not hitting the baseball. And his versatility in fantasy is almost second to none, with him qualifying at second, third, short, and outfield. And he's definitely worth the pickup for now until he cools off. And he's available in 83% of fantasy leagues as Owens. The next pickup here is Yermin Mercedes of the Chicago White Sox. So another Cuban slugger here on this Chicago White Sox team. And this guy, he started the season so far 8 for 8 in his first few games. But last night, it was a down game for him. But what are you going to expect this guy to bat 1,000 on the season? He went 1 for 5 last night. So Mercedes here, he's going to get an opportunity. And they definitely need this big bat in the lineup here, Chicago, with Eloy Jimenez out 5 or 6 months this season here. So far on the young season, 9 of 14 is Mercedes. 2 runs scored, 1 home run, 6 RBIs, a 643 batting average. This guy, he's tearing it up right now in the early going. And April 2nd at Los Angeles, 5 for 5 from the plate, a double, 4 RBIs. April 3rd, 3 for 4, a run scored, a homer, and 2 RBIs. And last night, 1 for 5 at the Angels. So Mercedes, he's available right now only in 42% of fantasy leagues. A ton of owners, they went out there already. They picked them up, and I don't blame them. When you see someone come out of the gates red hot like this, 8 for 8, I don't think it's much of a fluke. This guy, he's a big power bat, and he's the DH for the White Sox. And the only down thing with him for fantasy baseball is he only qualifies at the utility position right now. So we'll see if he can maybe play a corner outfield spot, which I doubt, or maybe some first base to give Jose Abreu a blow as the season goes on. The next play is Yoli Gurriel of the Houston Astros. So Gurriel, he's been pretty decent the last few seasons here for Houston, and he qualifies at first and third, so that's pretty good for your corner guys. He's 7 of 15 so far in the early going. 2 runs scored with a double, a homer, 3 RBIs, a 467 batting average, and a nice 579 on base percentage here for Gurriel. April 2nd at Oakland, 3 for 3 from the plate with a homer and an RBI. April 3rd, 0 for 4. And then yesterday at Oakland, 3 for 4 from the plate with a double, a run, and 2 RBIs. So Gurriel, he's batting 5th or 6th usually in this Houston Astro lineup. And he's been a solid player since he came over, Gurriel. And he's been a solid ball player the last 2 or 3 seasons. And right now, he's still available in 53% of fantasy leagues. And he's definitely worth an ad, in my opinion. This Houston team, they've battled some injuries over the years. And this guy, he's been a mainstay on this team and on this roster. And I think he's worth a shot in 12-team leagues or deeper. The next hit is David Dahl of the Texas Rangers. No one's ever questioned Dahl's ability to hit the baseball, but his injury problems were a problem for the Colorado Rockies, and they moved on for him here in the offseason. So he landed with the Texas Rangers, and so far in the early going, he's 5 of 13 from the plate. A nice 5 runs scored. No home runs, 1 RBI, but a 385 batting average and a 400 base percentage here for David Dahl. And he's available in 77% of fantasy leagues, which is great. April 1st at Kansas City, 3 for 5 with 2 runs and a double. April 3rd at the Kansas City Royals again, 2 for 4, 2 runs, a double. April 4th, 0 for 4 with a run and an RBI. And here today versus Toronto, he'll be in the lineup once again, is David Dahl. So if you need some outfield help with just a hitter on your bench or utility, I don't think you could go wrong, because like I said earlier in the video, with Nate Lowe, the same with David Dahl, this Texas Ranger team, they only have a few decent hitters like Joey Gallo, these 2 guys in Nate Lowe and David Dahl that they signed. They even cut Odor to give these guys opportunities as well. So this Ranger team's rebuilding, and veterans like Dahl and Nate Lowe are getting opportunities, and they're definitely worth ads so far in the early going of the season. The next hitter is Jazz Chisholm Jr. of the Miami Marlins. So Chisholm Jr. so far, he's been off to a torrid start. And this guy, he's a pretty quick guy. He qualifies right now at second and shortstop. So if you need some middle infield help on your fantasy roster, I think it's a pretty good ad to get him. And so far in the early going, he's 2 of 10 from the plate, 2 runs scored with a triple though, 2 stolen bases, 200 batting average, and a 333 on base percentage. So Chisholm Jr. so far, he's a player. If you need some stolen bases, and if you're in 14-team leagues or deeper, I think he's more of an ad. Unless you're in a deep 10-team or 12-team league with multiple positions and bench spots. But he's more of a deep league ad, like I mentioned. April 1st versus Tampa, he went 0 for 3 in that ball game. April 2nd, 2 for 3 with a run scored, an RBI, and a walk. And then yesterday, he went 0 for 4 with a run, but he did add 2 stolen bases and a walk is Chisholm Jr. So if you need stolen bases and runs scored, you can't go wrong with this guy in your middle infield position or at utility spot. The next hit is Cedric Mullins of the Baltimore Orioles. So we've seen flashes from Mullins on and off the last couple seasons, and so far this season he's been on a tear. 9 of 13 from the plate with 4 runs scored, 3 doubles already for him. No homers, no RBIs, but a 692 batting average and a 714 on base percentage. So Mullins, he's raking right now. April 2nd versus Boston, 2 for 4 with a run. Then April 3rd versus Boston, 2 for 4 again. And then yesterday, he just went off 5 for 5 with 3 runs, 3 doubles in that ball game. And he also drew a walk. So he was on base 6 times yesterday in Mullins. And this is what Baltimore's looking for this season. Obviously, they're not going to make the playoffs. But this Baltimore team, they're trying to compete at least and make things a little interesting here in the AL East. And so far, they're off to a good start at 3-0. And Cedric Mullins is off to a great start. And he's a player available in 90% of fantasy leagues. So he's definitely worth an ad in my opinion. And when a guy gets off to a red-hot start like this and you got some dead weight on your roster, it's definitely worth a flyer to take on Mullins. And the final hitter I would look to add on waivers this week is Luis Arraez of the Minnesota Twins. So Arraez, another player who could play multiple positions in fantasy baseball, second, third, and outfield, which is pretty good. And just like these other guys, he's a guy getting an everyday opportunity, it seems like, for this Minnesota Twin team. And he's reaching base so far in the early going on the season. He's 6 of 12 at the dish, 1 run scored. He hit a double, 2 RBIs, 3 walks, a 500 batting average, and a 600 on base in the first few games here for Arraez. 2 for 5 from the plate, April 1st at Milwaukee with 2 hits and an RBI. Then 1 for 4 at the Brew Crew once again. And then yesterday in Milwaukee was his biggest game so far, 3 for 3 with a run and a double in that one. And he drew 2 walks. And today at Detroit, he's batting first once again. So he's the leadoff hitter for Minnesota. He's the table setter. And this is a guy who looks like he could hit the baseball. His versatility is really nice here in fantasy baseball. And he's available in 74% of fantasy leagues. So here's a few hitters you should add here in the first few days of week 1 of the fantasy baseball season.